Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Straight into this one. We hope you are well. Big Joe Shep here, Chief Bloke and founder at the ThreeBOD Rugby Group, and our new series of Live at 5, where we take a topic that's sort of breaking in the news or come to the fore again, and we go through sort of 10, 15 minutes as ever. It is brought to you by our good friends at CoffeeDog.ie and especially Chef's Blend, the best coffee to wake up in the morning. Yes, you too can now wake up with Chef. So scary thought, lads. I bet their missus love the idea personally, but there we go. On today's show, we are looking at the 20 minutes red card trial, which has been rolled out into Super Rugby Aotearoa in New Zealand, Super Rugby Australia, and we are, and it's in Major League Rugby as well. I think Andy's going to cover that in varsity in South Africa, the schools competition, and it's been proposed for it to be in the new Rainbow Cup, which is the Pro 16 competition, the Rainbow Cup, which starts in April, runs through to June, where the 4 franchises from South Africa will join the Pro 12 team in the Northern Hemisphere, and it'll be the precursor to them being in the league next year. So is this good for rugby? 20 minutes where basically a player gets sent off for a red card offence, and 20 minutes later they can come back. Sorry, the player doesn't come back on, but a replacement can. Is that the right thing to be doing? Is it born out of COVID and medical issues? How do we play with all that? To tell us whether it's got anything to do with COVID is our doctor in the house. It is from South Wales Ulster Supporters Club. We've got Chris BROWNFIELD, and from Scrum5 Rugby, and our co-host and lead for ThreeBOD Ball and Blitzbod in South Africa, it's Andy DANIEL. Straight in, Chris, anything to do with COVID, brother?
Well, World Rugby, back in May of 2020, introduced what they decided were temporary optional law trials on COVID-19, of which they laid out, I think it was 10 significant changes to the game, which each individual union around the world could buy into and trial and adopt as and when, of which one of those was the reinforcement high tackle sanction framework. Basically, they're trying to reduce as much as possible the amount of time we've got face-to-face contact. And of course, if you're going in towards a high tackle, there's that risk of cross-contamination in the immediate space. So when they brought this concept out, they were looking at the offending player being removed and a TMO sighting/Hawkeye review of the incident. And if deemed a red card offence, the player would not return. But if they deemed it was a yellow card or a penalty only, the player could return after 15 minutes. Now, from what we can read about the Rainbow Cup proposal, they're taking that a step further, whereby they're thinking of the player will ultimately receive a double yellow sanction of 20 minutes and then stay off the park, i.e. the 20-minute red, and then an alternative player comes onto the park for the remaining part of the game. So the plan was, by changing behaviours from higher transmission risk upright tackles to lower transmission of lower tackles. So that was about trying to reduce the opportunity. World Rugby, we're looking primarily at the high tackle, but from what we can gather from the Rainbow Cup, they're looking at any tackle that would be considered a red, or any foul play that would be considered red would be a 20-minute of that player removed, and then a subsequent player coming on instead. So there is a little bit. There also, and we know, Joe, from pre-match chat, we know there was some discussion about scrummages collapsing, only one scrum collapse, and then it going to a free kick for the attacking play. So there's been lots going on. It's all about trying to minimise the amount of time players, particularly the front five. Even mauls, they're going to be having one maul rather than a second stop. I think they're cutting that down. But this doesn't necessarily impact on the Rainbow Cup as such. But COVID is having a massive part to play in the decision-making at the higher echelons. And I think trials are the only way we'll get to understand if it's a good thing or not for the game. And of course, World Rugby actually started talking about this long before COVID. It was discussed back on the 15th of October in 2018 by World Rugby magazine, of which Paul Williams, a columnist, and Alan Peary had pros and cons for the entire concept. And anything I've read at this stage to both yourself, Joe, and Andy. Everything I've read, there seems to be an absolute 50-50 split between the rugby fan population, the supporters, whether or not they really buy into the idea or not. It's going to be one of those that some will love it, and some will absolutely categorically think it's another step of changing the sport and the way forwards.
So there's a whole brilliant intro, mate. Thanks very much for that, Chris BROWNFIELD. Andy, this has been brought into South Africa in the schools. Explain to us about what's been changing there in the last 12 months.
Yeah, no, so it's been in Varsity Cup. Just to start on the rule itself, I've personally flipped a complete 180 on it. If you'd have asked me 3 years ago, I'd have been like, no, absolutely not. It's ridiculous because it took so much to get a red card. Now, it doesn't take a lot to get a red card. Like, it's a misjudgment of height. It's a step to the left instead of step to the right. Some of them are still stupid, but I actually agree with the rule now. I'm a fan of it because it can just ruin the game so quickly, you know. And some of it used to be intentional to get a red card. Now it's not. It's about mistiming stuff and hitting a rock at the wrong stage. But what they've done over here, and I watched it last year, was Varsity Cup before COVID hit, was that not only did they bring in the 20-minute rule, but they brought in a tackle height restriction of the nipple line down. And it was something I really started to watch when I was going to games. I was really keeping an eye on it. And it went back to being how you were taught to tackle as a kid. It was literally like head on the side, land your head on the soft bit. And it helps with the offloading game, which is a nightmare for the defence because the defence is now seen as a form of attack in the fact that you can still knock people backwards by tackling them around the waist. You get low, you can actually propel yourself forward better. So what we were seeing was a much more old school style of tackling and chopping the guy to the ground. The turnovers, some may argue there was way too many turnovers because you are literally chop tackling, which means number 2 is just straight over the ball, which we saw a lot when it came out when the rugby came back last year in the first Aotearoa. We've seen so much of the breakdown. But yeah, for me, I think it has to come in now. But the other thing that also needs to happen is that World Rugby need to stop changing rules now. It's constant. Nobody knows where they stand anywhere. We've seen even at the weekend, we were watching so many examples of
difference.
Even the commentators are like, well, like the Mike Brown incident. And then I look at, say, for instance, something that completely contradicts this head rule was in the Bath London Irish game. Blair Cowan takes a 15-meter run up and goes to clear Henry Thomas out, hits him in the shoulder. Thomas goes down. Luckily, he stayed on. I mean, he could have done all sorts of damage. But the problem was he ran in from 15 meters, Absolutely. You know, and it was needless. The ruck was lost. He won't get cited for that because he didn't go near the head, but it was just as dangerous. He could have popped his shoulder or anything. So, yeah.
And that's what it leads into the question of actually there should be sightings for things which are ultimately dangerous, because that is just as bad for me. That is a red card incident. You would classify that as a near miss. Yeah. In health and safety in big companies, you would class that's a near miss, you know, and you need to do something about that. And so therefore, I think there's got to be an interpretation of that across. But I understand what you're saying about the rules. So they've been going for 2 years in Super Rugby Aotearoa in New Zealand and then Australia. Obviously, they brought in. I like the idea about this the line across the jersey for the youngsters and going back, because I mean let's not forget that this was brought in. The high tackle thing was brought in as it's a league thing, and it was to stop people offloading the ball. And of course, you go high, then there's always a danger that you're going to hit higher. I mean, we've looked looked at. And, you know, I can't remember the figures, but tremendously stopped the amount of collisions in the air when they were going for them. And we were talking about flying before, and Chris saying about, you know, the whole Gary Owen thing. In fact, tell us your view on that, Chris, on the Gary Owen thing. What's going to happen? What's going to be the next rule that they'll change?
Well, the Gary Owen thing, at the moment, there's nothing from World Rugby on it, but I've had a good chat with some of our guys over the last year, 2 years, probably since really driven by the Jared Payne Sarri's incident with Good when they, in the first 4 minutes, they collided for going for the same ball, and Jared was sent off 4 minutes into the quarterfinal of the Heineken. But for me, I think it's an opportunity whereby it will eventually go, and I think it will probably go to the point that the ball will have to bounce at least once before anyone can actually play it, and that's going to have a huge knock-on effect to how people defend the Gary Owen, because that ball's going to go anywhere. It's just one of those, for people working with concussions and head injuries, it is a massive opportunity for people to be, taken out from underneath, as we had at the weekend again. There was a mistimed run, and it was deemed, I can't remember what the referee said, but it was basically, okay, nothing to see here, move on, purely accidental. The player come down his shoulder rather than his head. Another foot to the left, that would have been catastrophic. I can see Gary Owen being one of those.
I wonder sometimes whether, a lot of this should be coached in situ by the coaches themselves about, because basically, so is it just when you get onto the field? I mean, I remember back to when I used to play, you've got that almost that red mist thing. It's almost like, you're so into the game and it's all and everything. And you just, it's easy in hindsight to look back at fractional moments that the brain has to comprehend. And I know they're professional players, etc., but I think there is difficulties at times. As to the red card itself, should it be a different coloured card? I understand what they're trying to do, but how will it affect the game? I think it comes down to, I think you've got to have a different coloured card for a start. I think you have to have an understanding between intentional and non-intentional. The thing you were saying, Andy, about your man, that actually the TMO should be reviewing that and saying, in fact, actually they've come down to this captain's call thing. That is an intentional, dangerous bit of play, running in like that to do a clear out. And that for me is an immediate sanction. So it's those sort of things I think that would help the game if they were being sort of viewed at as well. What do our guests, who have we got on today? Kay Beechner is on. Catherine, hope you're well. She likes the new red card trial. Catherine, what do you like about it? Why do you think it's going to be an added value? Ian Gilbert, our ambassador extraordinary to the Court of Madrid from Ulster. Hola, Ian. Hope that you're well. Gregor Galway, great to see you on last week, mate. What are your thoughts on it, Gregor? Colin Broomfield on tonight's show on Three Blokes, our joint show with the four Provinces Rugby Supporters Group there. Hi, fellas, how are you? Who else have we got? And I think we've got, let's add Connor in again. Will this new rule encourage certain key players to be targeted early in the game? Interesting point. Nigel Quigley, our Night King, and also there. It needs something. I'm not entertained by those oddball hits from officials taking 5 minutes if a card because it's obvious in the first place. There is quite a bit of that, but I think they're making the point of trying to talk through the process is the difficulty it comes. And sometimes I think the assistant ref, the linesmen, whatever you want to call them, lineswomen, linespeople, they're just not. They're not forceful enough of, I saw this. This is what I saw. Make a decision, and go and do it. Some new messages there. Nijad's a traffic light LED system on the ref's forehead entertainers when they're doing the me. Actually, I think that with modern technology now, you could do that. That would be really, really good. Who else? Dave Toppin is on, and he's on as well, but from one of our Connor Westies. Excellent point about changing the rules. Yeah, they are constantly changing. And Catherine asked her the question, why do you like it? She said, because a red card ruins a game, especially if it occurs early in the game. So, today is just a thought provoker. It is why. So we're going to ask Andy and Chris to leave us with one final thought on what they would like to see coming out of it, whether it stays, whether it goes, whether they'd like it adapted. This is just a thought provoker. The Live at 5 series is just to get you going, get you thinking about something. Got at 5 o'clock once you finish the day or you're heading off home, and that's all it's for, sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes max. And then we'll follow up with them with a full hour-long show on one of the 6 shows, 6 live shows in the series of the ThreeBOD Rugby Group. So, Andy Daniel, our man from Bath, entrenched in South Africa, in Paarl, give us your view on what you want to see out of it, what the positive is, and what is the final takeaway for you?
I'd like to see better tackling technique from a rugby geek perspective. There's too many. Sometimes people are trying to knock people's head, not literally, but like trying to make these massive hits. They don't need to. Just drop the man to the floor or do what Ireland do and get 2 in there and hold it up. So for me, I'd like to see people actually make an attempt to tackle properly, because that's half the issue. They're continually trying to line up massive hits. And the other thing is, I think unless it's completely clear and obvious, I'm not sure if it's a different colour card, orange card, or they used to have a green card, didn't they, in hockey, where they sort of went on report, so to speak. Rugby league do it. And they deal with it afterwards. But maybe just make the sanctions afterwards a bit heavier, and then say, look, it's not clear and obvious. It's going to get checked afterwards, but let's just play rugby. And that for me is not letting somebody get away with it, because retrospectively they won't. But you're just slowing down the game. And rightfully, we were praising Wayne Barnes and was it Luke Pearce for the way they handled some of the stuff in the France-Wales game. But my word, it takes a while, eh? It takes a long time, and it's kind of like, it's not. Do you know what? Just crack on and deal with it afterwards. You're still going to get punished for it, but all you're doing is punishing the game of rugby for those 80 minutes.
Because you've got the concertina effect, haven't you?
It goes on and on and on, and then next thing you know, there's another one and another one, and people are in the referee's ear. Well, you check that one, so why aren't you checking this one? And it's like, all right, well, I'll check it. And it's
cool.
I want to see a quicker game.
Good, excellent. Chris, give us your final thoughts, mate. What's your takeaway for it?
Final thoughts, linking back to Andy's point there at the very end of what you said, Andy. The Rainbow Cup are also going to hopefully trial a captain's challenge, whereby a captain will be able to physically say, stop, disagree. They've got 10 seconds, I think, from the moment the whistle's blown on it to challenge. And it'll only go back one phase. So there is that opportunity about actually challenging, and that's it. If you win that challenge, you retain the right to challenge again. If you lose it, your one challenge opportunity's gone and dusted. So that challenging thing might go. I think the other thing for me is the current 10-minute rule stifling play? Am I going to defend and literally play no rugby for 10 minutes to try and keep the side off that inevitable 7 points that they're going to get out of it? If I go to 20 minutes, that means it's open play. You can't stifle for 20 minutes in a park. It's not going to happen with 14 men. But by the same token, Italy against Ireland, 13 players in the park, was it, by the end of the game? That just makes a non-game.
The Bath game of the weekend, Bath were down to 12 at one stage.
Yeah.
And London Irish down to 14 or 13 at one stage.
Ulster were down to, Ulster Zebra, 15th versus 13. So I sort of think there's that opportunity. But I'm going to finish on Nigel Owen's opinion. And Nigel says categorically, it's got to be used for there's that 50-50 where is it, isn't it? That's when the orange card comes in, whatever colour it is. But he says, in Nigel's own words, if it's a nailed-on red card in the first or last minute, you still got to go red. And nobody's coming back on to substitute you. You suffer as a team for that one foul play. Yeah. And I think Nigel's on the money. There needs to be a balance on that.
It's just too easy to get a red now.
It is.
It's too easy to get a red, and that's where
that's your 50-50 comes in.
Yeah, I completely get what Nigel Owens is saying. Yeah,
absolutely right. That's it. Right, right. I'm not getting charged the crate for going over 20 minutes on this one because all Andy Daniel has done is kept the chat talking along, so it goes over 20 minutes. So that I
intelligence on the show, Joe.
I end up with another crate at the Christmas party, at the ThreeBOD Christmas party, for going over timings. In all seriousness, me and Gilbert, just to finish off, says I'm not sure an orange card would be a good idea. We'll have to have flag. We'll have to have a flag.
Oh, with a flag.
A flag.
Sort of flag.
Call it Amber says, Annie, and nice to finish off. Correct, Andy. They've been seriously diluted. And Colin BROWNFIELD says he agrees with Nigel Owens, not Quigley. Lol. Okay,
as always.
Absolutely, as you do. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the ThreeBOD Rugby Group. It's our new series live at 5. We'll do them a couple of days a week, normally in between shows. But we do have another show tonight. And at 8:30, we've got a joint show. It's the Three Blokes, a Ball and Bod show, jointly with 4 provinces rugby supporters, with great Conor BROWNFIELD, and myself and Conor will be co-hosting it. And we have got Danny Brosnan and Munster fan on, and we'll be looking back at last Saturday's terrific win for Leinster. Sorry, Dan, against Munster in the Pro 14 final, but also looking at where Leinster and Munster are, and is there a gulf in what's happening and key players and how Irish rugby divides those. So join us at 8:30. It'll be on the page and shared into the normal groups. And at the bottom of the thing, there's our YouTube channel. Please, please, please go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, because in 2 weeks' time, these shows live on 5 will be exclusively on our YouTube channel. A huge thank you to Chris BROWNFIELD from the South Wales Ulster Rugby Supporters Club, and to Scrum5 Rugby's Andy DANIEL, who is obviously our co-host and our lead for our South African and Springbok Rugby show out there as well. Guys, until sometime later in the week when we decide we'll have another live at 5, stay safe. We'll see you at 8:30 tonight for the 3 Blokes and the 4 Provinces Rugby Group show. And remember, we are, as ever, brought to you by SHEPs Blend, courtesy of CoffeeDog.ie. The only thing to wake up to the morning is with Shep. See you later.